that you may not be aware of, or help you fill in the pieces from the harmonic aspect of songwriting. I understand that Mary did the melodic, covered the melodic aspect of songwriting at the last session, if I'm correct about that. So hopefully this will dovetail a little bit and hopefully give you some information. This class is for you, okay? So if you have questions, if you don't understand anything, or if you want to go faster, please don't feel funny about telling me and asking as many questions as you want, and I want to paste this to you. Now, but just as a quick question, how many people have brought instruments today? Guitars?
Well,
we have one piano.
I did, but not, I brought that because I played a show and they gave it to me and I want somebody to look at it because...
Oh, can you play it?
No, it's out of tune right now and I tried to get a tune. It's about an $800 auto harp.
Okay, and no guitars in here? No big
Can you count the voices one?
You absolutely could. Do you want to stand?
And you would get this.
That's all right. I thought it would be kind of fun, the second part, to have everybody play and actually work on improvising over these structures. But if we don't get there, that's not a big problem, since you guys, that's not a big aspect of what you do anyway. So anyway, how many people in here have ever taken a music theory course of any kind?
Music theory?
Music theory. Okay. College, high school?
TCU.
TCU? Okay, so you're familiar with some of the fundamentals then. How many people read music? Okay, a couple of people, and don't worry, if you don't, there's not a problem. We're going to explore it anyway. Okay, so today what we're going to do is kind of look at some chord relationships that create families within a major scale. And I think you're going to be astounded as we go through the examples, how many hit songs are created where the chords are almost always in the same key. So what we're going to be dealing with is a major scale, and we're creating a formula on each major scale. If you think of that major scale as a parent scale, if you go back to, I think it was algebra or geometry, we used to talk about sets and subsets. You remember that vaguely? Okay, well actually major scale is going to be the parent scale or the main set, and then we're going to discover some of the chords that exist as subsets within that tonality. Okay? So it's very easy to understand once we do this, and extremely usable, which is what I always like. Okay, so let's say everybody in here can sing a little bit. You gotta excuse my voice because I'm not a singer, but let's go ahead and sing. If you want to just sing Do, Re, Mi, okay? We're going to sing a C major scale. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Right, okay? So our home base is C, right? And if you look, and again, hopefully you can see this, it's kind of tiny, but it's the best we can do. We're going to write up what we just sang on the staff. Okay? All the white notes on the piano. If you don't know about staffs, don't worry about it. We're looking at the structures almost from a different perspective, so if you're not sure of which lines and spaces are named what, don't worry about it. Okay, now you know that we got a home base, right? That always sounds like we're home, and then we have this note right before the 7th degree is called the leading tone. You don't need to remember that, except the fact, I'm going to put LT up there for leading tone, that is one of the governing forces for harmony. Particularly in pop, rock, and country. It's used everywhere. I'm going to explain to you how. I want to make sure I follow my agenda here. Don't take too many shortcuts. Okay, so if we do letter names on this, of course we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay, now you're going to wonder why I did some uppercase, some lowercase. I'll explain that in a minute, okay? But those are the names of the notes in the scale. Now, within this scale, let's go ahead and sing Do, Mi, So, Mi, Do, which is what degrees of the scale? Do, right? 1, 3, 5, right? Do, Mi, So, Mi, Do, right? Everybody sing that for me. Do, Mi, So, Mi, Do. Okay, so what we've got is our first chord in the key of C major. This is actually called the triad. Anybody know why it's called a triad?
3 notes?
3 notes, excellent. And if you'll notice, they're pitched 3 apart. C, D, E. 3 pitches, right? Okay, so that's a triad. Now, this is the great thing. When we play the chord C, that sounds like home, right? Even more so just with the C, we're home. Now, the interesting thing is, as a writer and a composer, you can use triads on our build triads on every single note of that major scale. So see what we're doing? We're creating chords. Now, do any of those chords within that scale have sharps or flats? No, they don't, because they're coming out of the key of C major. So they're all contained within the key of C major. It's like a subset kind of thing. And if you would play them as simple triads on the piano, it's like taking your white keys and just going up by thirds. Back to home, okay? Now, the interesting thing happens that the quality of the chords changes as we start with this root note. For example, we know that this is major, right? Because we're C major. But let me play you the chord that starts on D and tell me if that sounds major or minor to you.
Minor.
Yeah, it's minor, right? Okay, so that's why I put the little D there. This is actually a D minor triad. I'll explain that why in a minute.
See, I see.
Okay, I'll explain why when we get to the next page of the handout. Right now, I just want you to go by sound unit. Okay, and those of you that are guitar players, don't read music, you can go home and just play these chords and see what they sound like together. Here's the third chord in C major. Does that sound major or minor to you? Again?
I thought it sounded major.
Major? And part of the thing is we're still hearing in the key of C. But if I was going to play in the key of E, okay, there's your major. Now listen to this triad out of the key of C. It's minor, isn't it? Yeah, and it's going to fool you because what you're doing is hearing it as a subset of C major, and so in a way you kind of think it's major. Actually, construction-wise, it's a minor chord. All right? All right, now let's go to the four chord and see what we have. Yeah, thanks, take one of those. For F, what does that sound like to you? Major or minor? And you can always go, just pretend that's do, and go do, mi, so, mi, do. Does that sound major?
Major.
Right, and that's why I've got the uppercase there. That's an F major triad, okay? Let's try the G. And those of you that have played music for a long time, you've seen this progression a lot. G to C, G to C, G to C, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Do, mi, so, mi, do. Right? That's definitely major, right? And that is a big, important chord next to the tonic, which is what this is called, or the root chord, home base. This 5 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is the most important chord structurally in music of all times, anytime, anywhere, anytime. Okay? Now, let's see what happens when we get to the 6. We're building a triad. Again, just 3 notes stacked up on the note A. Let's see what that sounds like. Does that sound sad or happy to you? Major, minor?
Depends on which way you play it.
Right, if you're going to be cheerful, you can. Okay, let me show you alternative. On the same root note. Now let's play it from the key of C. Sounds sad or happy? Yeah, it's minor. Okay, so A minor falls there. Now we've got an oddball. This one is goofy.
B.
Yeah. Anybody know from music theory what kind of chord that is? It sounds real compressed and squished and tense, doesn't it? Anybody know what the name of that chord is? Diminished. Diminished, yeah. That's one of those little squirrely chords that people don't like to think about, but they exist, okay? So this one we're going to call diminished, all right? So when you're sitting at your instrument, piano or guitar or whatever, and you're writing a tune in the key of C, remember that you've got all these chords that fit in the same family. Now right now I'm just going to play plain triad. C, here's a 2 chord, 3 chord, F major, G, A minor, and then B diminished. Okay, it's actually... See how they sound like they fit together. Right? Okay? So you really have a whole family of chords that work really well together. Yeah, some of you are old enough to remember Stevie Wonder. Do you remember that big hit he had, You Are the Sunshine of My Life? C, F, H, there's a connection in those chords that smooths things out. And it gives you some more options if you're writing in the key of C than you might have thought about. Okay, now, I'm a jazz person, but those of you that play rock or funk or any of that stuff, we usually throw another note on the stack. I want you to note really quickly the visual aspect of these, what we'll call a college word, tertian stacks. Tertian meaning thirds, they're just stacks of thirds. You don't have to remember that. But if you look at it, if the bottom note starts on a line, what happens to the other notes? They're all on lines, right? And they're stacked up in thirds, right? C, D, E, E, F, G. So they're really gonna, when you're building chords in thirds, they're gonna have a visual aspect to them. This one I missed a note there, sorry about that. Okay, so D minor, a D minor 7 would start on D, and all the notes would be on spaces. Okay, now if you look in your sheet, you've got, I think the back page or something, there's a blank sheet of manuscript paper. If you want to take notes and write on that, even if you don't, yes, take notes. You don't have to, but if you want to, it's there. And if you don't read music, if you don't read a staff, don't worry about it. You can copy this information down, and it will still have meaning for you because of what we're talking about as far as quality of the chords. Okay, now, in traditional theory, not the commercial theory that we kind of deal with, but in traditional music theory, they use Roman numerals to denote these types of things. When we're doing analysis, and those of you who took theory class probably remember Roman numerals, right? So the 1 chord would be Roman numeral 1. There's our 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord is a uppercase, right, because it's major. 5 chord, uppercase because it's major. 6 chord, minor. And the 7 has a little circle there for diminished, okay? This one actually, and I'm not going to mess you up here, it's called a diminished triad, but when you add the 7th onto this degree of the scale, it's called a B minor 7 flat 5. It sounds like a big name chord, but you don't need to worry about that. The only thing that you need to remember is that when you do a stack of 7s in the key of C, you get this oddball chord on 7.
It's called what, one more time?
It's called B minor 7 with a flat 5. Now that's one of them off chords.
That's a song right there.
That's a song right there. One of my friends who's a jazz player went to Nashville, was playing in a session, and I guess he wrote a tune for the guys. He had one of those chords in it, and one of the session guys said, "That's one of them off chords. That's one of those off chords." And it is. It's kind of an off chord.
B minor.
B minor 7, and it has a flat 5. And we don't have to worry about that right now because the chances of you using that in a song probably are pretty minimal for pop and rock, unless you're Steely Dan or those kind of people that are more jazz oriented, okay? But you see the beauty of this system, what they did with the Roman numerals, and this originated probably a couple hundred years ago, but they're showing not only the placement in the scale, but the quality of the chord, right? So you've got majors, very obviously major, and then the minors. Notice that there's 3 of them in the chord. The 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and then our little goofy 7 chord, okay? Now, if I add 7s onto these all, this is what we get. We get a C major 7, a D minor 7, and you can use uppercase for this. It's not a big deal. Where my erase go here. In other words, when you're writing a tune, you don't usually write a lowercase d. Some people do, some people don't. A lot of times they'll just, let me get a better marker. That's worse. How about this one? Yeah, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7. Now G is an anomaly. Those of you who take theory, remember that's called a dominant 7. Dominant tells you the name of it because next to 1, that's the most important chord. Well, I'll show you why in a minute. A minor 7 is our 6th chord, and then our goofy B minor 7 flat 5. Okay? Now, let me play you those. And all we actually did by getting the 7th chord is throw another note on that stack of thirds. We can do the same if you're writing a 9th chord. You throw another third on top of the stack. That's all it is. Now, what are the interesting interesting things that happens that really blows people's minds. Take a look. When we have a D minor chord here, what's hiding within that D minor chord? What are these notes? F, A, C. Do you see them anyplace else in there? It's an F chord, right? So D minor 7 chord is really an F over D, isn't it? So if you went over to piano and we played an F chord, right, you get a D minor 7 chord. It's kind of interesting because the farther you go up the stack, you know, you're starting to repeat and get different triads on top of others. And that's where you get these people playing these interesting, who was the guy that used to write a lot of this stuff? Stravinsky, very alternate, playing an E triad over C, and those kind of things. So musicians use that kind of idea a lot. Sound more ambiguous is probably a good word for it. Okay? So everybody start with the idea here. All we've got is a major scale. We've put up stacks of thirds on each degree, and all of a sudden we've got a formula. This is a formula. This will work for every single major scale. All you have to do is change the bottom notes and the key. So let me play you one very famous song. That's from the key of C. And this is your guess that tune, name that tune. Okay, see if anybody can look at that first tune and tell me what it is before you hear it. I couldn't even do it. I couldn't even do it. Because we're not hearing the melodic element, right? But, yeah, you gotta hear it. And look at how simple the chords are. Take a quick look at it and see, is there any chord in there that's not the key of C in that first example? Did you? You got one. Did you get a hand up?
Yeah, I did. Well, I'm trying to take it.
Oh, take it. Okay.
Sorry.
Just want to make sure you
Yeah,
got it.
you are my sunshine?
No, although it almost could be, couldn't it? 7. So let's take a look at that section of Ode to Joy and see what it would sound like if instead of using the E7, I used the diatonic chord from C, which would have to be what? E minor, right. So I'll play that second part and see which one you like better. This is starting on the second line. Where am I? Yeah. Doesn't work, does it? Probably because we're so used to hearing the song the right way, but... There it is. You can see how well that works? E7 to A minor really gives you a neat little jog there. Okay, sometimes it's just very simple. Adding a 7 gives you an unexpected zing to keep the progression from being too boring, too diatonic. And we're going to see how that works with a lot of the songs that we're going to go to. So that's our tune in C. All right, now since we said this is a formula, that means I want you to get out on your handout, turn the page and look at the next diagram. This is the dreaded circle of fifths. Okay?
I thought there was a bunch of guys at the bar.
Well, that could be awesome, yeah. That's not so dreaded then, is it? The circle of fifths just is a good way, particularly since we use of read music, of keeping track how the key signatures work together. Okay? Since we're mostly guitar players and piano players and playing pop music and country and all that, what we're going to do is go clockwise on the circle. Now, if you're a bebopper and a jazz player like me, we tend to go to the flat side because horns, trumpets, saxophones are pitched in flat keys. So we play a lot of tunes in jazz in B flat, D flat, A flat, D flat. But if you're playing guitars, basses, country kind of stuff, rock kind of stuff, you'll notice most of the keys tend to be on the sharp side. So that's what we're going to do today.
That's why they invented the capo.
That's right, exactly. So you can play the key of A flat, it's no big deal, right? Okay, so we've already covered, if you'll notice that we got a nifty little thing here on your circle of fifths, you'll notice that at the very top, the 12 o'clock position, we got C major, okay? The basic key. All right, now underneath that, see how it says A minor? Have you ever heard of key relationships called relative, majors, and minors? Maybe some of you have, some of you haven't. Okay, that means that the major key and the minor key are connected by key signature. They share the same key signature, so the key of C has no sharps and flats, the key of A minor has no sharps and flats. They lie in a 1-to-6 relationship. So here's our major, here's the relative minor, and that's the relationship they stand in. Okay, so as you go around this circle of fifth, let's go to the next stop on the circle. Going clockwise, we get G major, okay, which has one sharp. And for those of you that are not comfortable with reading music, I've given you the order of sharps and the order of flats up here. Okay, B, E, A, D, G, C, F. If you read it in this direction, that's your order of flats. So in other words, if you only have one flat in your key signature, it'll be B. If you have two flats in your key signature, it'll be B flat, E flat. Does that make sense? Okay. Now the nifty thing is, to get the order of sharps, you just go in reverse. So you only have to memorize one thing. So if we're going to the next stop on our circle of fifths, okay, and we are going to the next key after C, what's the first sharp going to be? F sharp, right? So I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to try and use it in green so we can tell these apart. I'm sorry we don't have access to a bigger board here, guys, so move if you have to. There's our sharp. And again, if you don't read music, don't worry about it. All you have to remember that you got one sharp, and now we're in the key of G. And what's its relative minor? E minor. Yeah, they share the same key. And if you count up from G, G, A, B, C, D, E, it's a 1-to-6 relationship. That'll always be true. Okay, it's like law of physics. In fact, it is physics. Okay, the physical properties of the harmonic overtone series is what dictates all of this, which is why, if you listen to very basic cultural country music from many, many different cultures around the world, tend to favor the same chord progressions, because it has to do with where those harmonic series lie on a harmonic overtone series with piano space, every instrument. Even the voice, I guess people could argue would be that. Okay, that's digressing, so don't worry about writing all that down. Anyway, we're now in the key of G, so what we're going to do, we're going to try and determine, and I want you to use your manuscript paper. Go ahead on the next line on your manuscript paper, if you've got pencil or pen, put a sharp on your top line. That'll give you your F sharp. And we're going to start on this G right here. And I want you to draw up your G major scale. Okay, remember we're just going pitch to pitch, like walking up a ladder or stairs. You're not going to skip it. It'll be line, space, line, space, line, space, all the way up. Okay, and those of you who've done this before, it's okay. You don't have to do it.
It's been a lot of years though.
That's okay. Yeah, yeah. I have a neighbor of mine who's a Delta International airline pilot. He's also an amateur guitar player. And he's begging me to teach him. I said, I'll teach you. And he says, I'm not any good. I said, I bet you're a better guitar player than I am a jet pilot. I wouldn't feel too bad about it. Okay, so anyway, here's what we get. And notice the stepwise motion of your scale. Scale really just means that. You're walking in steps. If we would play this on the piano, we're going to start on the note G, but when we get to F, we have to sharp it. We have to use one of those black keys on the keyboard in order to give us the right formula to create the G major scale. Here's Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do, right? In the key of G. Sounds just like C major except for starting on a different note. So if we finished doing all of our harmony up here, what do you think is going to happen here? Same thing, right? So let's write up on your paper, if you want to, the diatonic triads, and that's what we're calling them, diatonic triads. And let me explain that. Triads, we know we can add sevenths or ninths onto them. For right now, we restrict to probably 7 chords. Start with the triads. Diatonic of the tonic, or of the keynote, right? Of the root note. That's what diatonic means, from the key. Diatonic triads means chords that exist within the key. Make sense? It's not a big thing once you think about it. Okay, so after you get done writing your triads up, and I should move these down here so we can see them more without having to go into those pesky little ledger lines on this space, okay? So there's our triads. Now, we can go right away and put the letter names underneath. Well, the first one's going to be G, right? It's G major. Okay, now, following the formula we have up here, what is going to be the name of the second chord?
A minor.
A minor, exactly. A minor. And how about the third chord?
B minor.
B minor, yep. And the third chord? Just a C triad, right?
C.
Yeah, C triad. And the fifth chord?
D.
D. Yeah. Next one?
E minor.
E minor. And the next one?
Your funky F sharp diminished.
Yes, and you remember the F sharp. Don't forget that in the letter name of the chord, you have to reflect the key signature, right? So instead of an F minor 7 flat 5, it's an F sharp minor 7, or F sharp diminished rather. Now, if we add the sevenths onto them, all we have to do is add major seventh here. And just to give you an idea, a lot of pop people use a triangle to mean seventh. Have you anybody used iReal Pro or any of those apps? They're mostly for jazz players. But that's an abbreviation. It came from the guys writing fast in the studios. Instead of writing major and minor, if you're writing it longhand before computers came out, it was too easy to mistake a small case M for a big case M. So they came up with a triangle, which means major. So C, triangle 7. If you put that down, everybody will know you're a jazzer, okay? But it has its practical applications. And minor is a slash. Okay, so D minor 7, or in this case would be an A minor 7. Okay, so those are some abbreviations that are commonly used. So if I make a mistake and throw one up there, you'll know where it's coming from, because I'm so much in the habit of doing that. Okay, so we add sevens to all.
Quick
Yep.
question.
Yes.
When you talk about the triangle, is that the major 7?
Yes, that's
You
that's
said
critical
triangle
first.
for the 7, but it's actually the major 7.
Right, and that's an excellent point. Let me see if I can. Everybody got this already. We don't need this, right, anymore. Already got that. Okay, the Roman numerals that I come from. Okay, that's an excellent question, because what happens when we get the difference, and this is a common thing for songwriters, you want to know what the difference is between a major seventh and, like, for example, a G7. So let's say what's the difference between a G major seventh and a G7 chord, right? It all has to go back to that leading tone that I talked about. In the key of G, what's the leading tone? The leading tone is the note that comes right before the tonic, right when you're going on the scale. T, D, so it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, T, do. Notice the leading, it's called the leading tone because notice how it wants to drop strongly into the tonic, right? So a G major 7 chord, which you would have sitting here, I'm going to add my little triangle abbreviation to it, okay, would be spelled G, B, D, F sharp. It is a chord of rest. Okay, it's a chord that sounds like home. All right, now, if you take a G7, we have a G7 that exists as on the 5th degree of C. Remember how we talked about how important this chord is? This is called the dominant 7th, and the name tells it all. It's extremely compelling in that key. If you only had, like we noticed with the Beethoven Ode to Joy, G to C, G to C, G to C, it's like going back to home base over and over again. That progression of 5 to 1 is the strongest one in music that there is. Now, if we're going to do a dominant 7, what kind of F are we going to need if we're coming out of the key of C? An F natural, right? Okay, so anyway, listen to the difference in the way they sound. The important thing to remember about the dominant 7th is that they no longer are a chord of rest, it's a chord of movement. It wants to move 5 to 1, which is why that progression is so important. So here's your G major 7. Now by just taking that leading tone 7th and laying it down there, here's your G7. See how it wants to lead back to the key C again? Okay, so that's the difference. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just asking about the
symbols.
symbol, yeah.
Okay.
You said it was used for the 7th, and I was clarifying it's for the major.
For the major 7.
not
Yes,
the
yeah.
dominant 7,
For the 7th, it's just immediately followed. But at the same time, there's a whole family of chords within the dominant 7ths because they are so active. Those chords want to move. That's where you're going to find the most alterations. Now, again, if you're not writing in jazz or kind of Steely Dan's type of stuff where you're using more advanced chords, you probably won't see a lot of these in the things you're writing, but like G7 with an augmented 5, G7 with an augmented 9 or a flat 9. These alterations are often found on this chord because they increase the tension. Yeah.
In the key of G, G7 is an accidental, correct?
In the key of G, yes, if you did a G7, this would actually, you'd have to natural this. Right, so yeah, you would know, you'd be
But it's
throwing
very
yourself.
commonly used.
Well, it is in the blues, but that's a whole other ballgame. Because blues are made up mostly of all dominant 7ths. Okay, that's what gives it that kind of edgy, wonderful sound that we all come to love. The blues are made up of mostly dominant 7ths. I'll play a couple examples here. But let's take a look now at, before I do that and play the blues, let's take a look at the chords in the key of G. And I'm going to play another hit song for you. This is number 2 on Name That Tune on your handout. If you look at the chords, see if you can figure out what this is before I play it. I guarantee you probably can't. Once you take the melody out of the equation, it really screws them. I'm going to try to find where I put my... I can't find it. Whatever. Okay, so anyway. Here we go. I'm sorry. What's that? Well, yeah, exactly. This is about, I went out too here for a minute. That's right. There we go. And then, so we really have there, look at the chords. We've got an E minor. It's interesting because it really starts on what degree of that G scale? The 6th. So it almost sounds like it's in E minor, right? But where does the end of that phrase go? So we've got E minor. C is what degree of the G scale? Back to home bass, G, right? Now we're going to the 6, so it sounds like it's going to E minor. Back to 4, C, D, 4, 5, 1. How many times have you heard 4, 5, 1 progressions? When we deep, what's that little country tune? Behind closed doors. I play with Willie Nelson almost every tune he does. It's the 4, 5, 1s in there. It's great. It's one of the classic progressions, okay? And it's here too. Now, if you look at the second part of Fields of Gold, he's going 4 to 5 to 4 to 5 to 4 to 5 to 4 to 5, and throws it then or 4 to 1 rather. Sorry, 4 to 1, 4 to 1, and then throws a 5 in there. So it's I go 4, 1. Now here's 4, 5, 1. Okay, and he repeats that again. Okay, so that's Fields of Gold. Again, is there any chord in that progression that doesn't come from the key of G? Are there any oddball chords that he's changed in there? Looks like all pretty much G major, right? Yeah, okay. So, pretty successful too. Not too complicated there, huh? Okay. So now let's take a look at the next stop on our circle. We've got D major, which is how many sharps? And if you look on your circle of fifths, it'll tell you. It's the 2 o'clock position on your circle.
2.
Yeah, you got 2 sharps. And if you look at your order of sharps at the top, what are they going to be? F and what? Yeah, F sharp and C sharp. And again, this is where they're going to be sitting. Don't worry if you haven't studied that. This actually should be more right that. Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same thing. Remember, we're dealing with a formula here, so we know what to do. We write up our scale in D, and then we put the triads on top. We don't even have to put the triads on top now because we know what's going to happen. What's our 1 chord going to be called in the key of D? D, right? Okay, how about the 2 chord?
Trick question.
Trick question. 2 chord is what?
E minor.
E minor. Excellent. How about the 3 chord?
It's going to be F sharp.
Minor.
F sharp minor. Yeah, don't forget to bring the sharps over. That's an easy thing to forget. F sharp minor. How about the 4 chord?
G.
G. And the 5 chord? A, right. And the 6 chord?
A.
B. What?
Minor.
Minor. Okay, and then we have a what for the last one?
C.
C diminished. Sharp.
C sharp diminished, yeah, yeah. And don't feel bad about forgetting these things, as it takes a while until you remember all that. And just,
There's no forgetting with me.
okay.
It's learning.
It's learning, yeah, yeah. That's okay, it's all part of it. And I don't expect you guys to remember all of this. What I want you to do to take away from what we're doing today is the idea of diatonic chords. Chords that exist within a family, and the fact that if you know it for the key of C major, you know it for all the major keys. It works for all of them. Okay, now this is one of everybody's favorite songs. Number 3, can anybody figure out what this is? By looking at the chords. That's because you might just turn around. Okay, let me play it for you and see if you recognize it. Okay, now the first part of the tune, are there any, yeah, we'll get there. Are there any chords that aren't in the key of D? It goes 1, and then the G is what degree? 4, and then 1 to 4. We've seen that before a lot, right? 1 to 4 relationship. Does everybody know what a D over F sharp means? You know what that means when they've got a slash? You've probably seen that in music. Yeah, it means the triad. In this case, it would be a D triad with an F sharp in the bass. The note that's to the right of the slash just means the bass note. In this case, it's an inversion. It doesn't always have to be an inversion of the triad, but that's what that means. We actually have the third of that chord, D, F sharp, right, in the bass. And it gives it a little bit different sound. Walk down kind of thing. And then it goes back to G over D, same thing. Okay, now let's look at the second part of the tune. I want you to find the one chord that doesn't play in the key of G as I play it, or the key of D rather. Here we go. Yeah, listen to this. And so on and so forth. Now, that's really a neat chord, isn't it? It's not in the key, but it's so compelling. Let me play it with the chord that would be diatonic. What kind of F sharp chord would be in a key of D? Minor. Let's see what it sounds like if we, instead of the F sharp 7, we play the F sharp minor. See if you like it as much. Sounds pretty blah, doesn't it? Yeah, it gives that little zing to it. It's wonderful. It's almost the thing that makes that second part of the tune. Ah. So that's really a cool thing. And anybody explain why he would pick an F sharp 7 there? What's it going to? It's going to a G, and that's actually in classical theory, it's called a chromatic approach. A chromatic approach. You don't need to remember that. But that's another nifty thing. Remember we said that any major or minor chord could be preceded by its 5. Okay, like you said, the secondary dominance of 5 5s. Your wife was yelling about. Yeah. Another thing that can happen. Oh, hi, Ivy, how are you? Come on, sit up here and get a handout. It's good to see you. Or grab one of those right there. So, just like we talked about how any major or minor chord could be preceded by its 5, and give you a little extra zing. Chromatic approach chords are used all the time, either from above or below. You've heard it in the blues. If you listen to the blues, right? What did I do? Chromatic approach, right? Chromatic back into 1. Here's my diminished. Chromatic. And so what I'm doing is playing chromatic approaches from above and below all over the place. That was more of a jazz kind of blues, but it's also how many times? Right? So you'll hear those chromatic approach. Chromatic just means a half step from above or below, but that's something that a lot of songwriters use is a chromatic approach. And in Imagine, that's exactly what he's doing here. It's a chromatic approach. Right? From bridge, very cool. And it sounds a whole lot better than if he didn't make that a dominant seventh, right? It really makes that tune sing. Okay. All right, now, what's the next stop on our train trip here on the circle of fifths? We finished D, so how many sharps are in the next key?
3.
Yeah, 3. And if you look at your order of sharps on your circle of fifths, order of sharps, F sharp, C sharp, up, down here, G sharp. Okay, that's kind of good. All right, so now we're going to start on A, and we will draw our major scale chord qualities are going to be. First one is obviously major, right? And I don't know if everybody can see this. I need a big board, but we don't have a big board, so let me know if you can look this up. B what? Minor, thank you, very important, right? How about the next one?
C sharp.
C sharp minor, good to remember the C sharp. Okay, next one? D, right? Next one? E, right? Dominant, right? That's an important chord. Next one? F sharp. What quality? Major, minor? Minor, yeah.
Minor.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's messy up here now. I need a board about this big.
I was trying to borrow those.
And then
Then G sharp.
G sharp, diminished. The cuckoo chord, right? Alrighty. So now let's see if we can name that tune. Okay. This is one of my favorite tunes. This lovely man departed this life a couple years ago. See if you can look at your chords and figure out what you think this might be. Any clue? Now I can't sing it, so you're gonna have to bear with me while I try to play this melody. Remember, it goes real fast. Just take some artistic liberty, unartistic liberty. Now here's the hook. 5, 1. Sing for me, because I can't sing. What chord is this in the key of A? 5, 5, 5, 5. Right? So if you look at it, almost all of these tunes that we've been doing with end 5 to 1, don't they? And 5 to 1s crop up all over the place. They are the key defining progressions. And I would challenge you to go home and look at all of your favorite tunes or play your favorite tunes and start looking for those 5 1s. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to find them at the end of the tune. Unless it's the great Amen cadence, which is 4 to 1. So you're either going to go, or you're going to go, Amen. In fact, in classical theory, they call the 4-1 cadence a plagal cadence, but instead of saying plagal, we call it the great Amen, because that's how people remember it. But we won't get into that, because it's a whole other can of worms. So you don't want 3 years of college theory, it's not going to do any good. But you get the idea. Do we have any chords in Purple Rain that aren't in the key of A? Let's see what your...
What did you say, John?
Yeah, now let me take a look at some of those little businesses you got there. We've got an A with a sus2. That's a major. A suspend just means that we're adding that tone and it's substituting for something else. Now the 2 in this case is substituting for, what's the next closest note of the scale to the 2? 3. So instead of having a 3rd in that chord, what we're doing, what's the 2nd in the key of B? The 2nd note in the key, or in the key of A, I just gave it away, sorry. The 2nd note in the key of A is what? B. So we play an A major chord, but instead of the C sharp 3rd, we play a B. You hear that all over the place. Those sus2s, some people call them add 9s, all over the place. But if I played that without that, and on the 11th, it's the same thing. Here's the plain chords. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But if I add
It
those,
sounds simpler.
sounds simpler. Yeah, let me play it again, and I'm just going to play plain triads. A triad. Now instead of a minor 11, which is in a sense a minor with a sus4, I'm going to play a plain F minor. Now instead of an add 9 to the E, I'm just going to play plain E triad. But yeah. More spacious, isn't it? Yeah, a little bit more ambiguous and floating, and it's part of that tune. All they're doing is adding a little suspension there is what that's called. And if you're interested in that, you can always YouTube it, or you can look up on the web,
I
what
remember
the suspects.
in Paul Spooky's wedding song, where they hang on the aces.
Yes,
second
yes,
at the end
yeah.
of the lines.
Right, and it's a very powerful thing, so don't forget the suspended chords. They're used a lot by singer-songwriters, and it gives that little zing to the tune, like we discovered in this. The tune wouldn't sound like Purple Rain without that. It just really soars with those suspended notes, and that's what they're called. In the notes that are most commonly suspended, they call them a sus2 or a sus9, depending on how far we try to go. Sus2 just means you're substituting the second note for the third. Instead of the third chord, you use the second, which gives you that interesting interval between A and B. You have an interval of a second. And it goes back to that harmonic overtone series. If anybody's familiar with the harmonic overtone series, if you've ever seen it in theory classes, the biggest intervals are on the bottom of the harmonic overtone series. When singers first started singing back before medieval times, that was the first harmony. It was octaves, because men and boys were singing in unison. So the octave is the first interval on the harmonic overtone series. Does anybody know what the next interval is on the harmonic overtone series?
The fifth.
The fifth, yes. And so look at power chords. Right? That's a power chord, it's just root fifth. Right? And when people first started singing in medieval songs, a plain chant was in parallel fifths, an inverted parallel fourths. Those are the first intervals on the harmonic overtone series. But when we get to intervals of seconds, like we're doing here, A and B next to each other, they're at the top, near the top of the harmonic overtone series, so they give us a little extra zing, a little extra color to the sound. Now, if I play this whole thing in power chords, we'd be at the bottom. Listen to it. Boom. Sounds like Metallica, right? Or whatever. Okay, and set your hair on fire time. Which is nothing wrong with that. It's cool too, But it gives a whole different sound.
If this is, I don't know if this is a natural place for you to break, or if you want to, then we can take a quick break and then come back, or if you want to.
Let me play one more tune for you,
Yeah, please,
and then we'll come back and do
absolutely.
question and
Yeah.
answers, and then we'll be done. Only two more. And so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to bother to write out the E one for you, because you understand the process now, right? So what we're going to do on this next one is go to the next stop on the circle, which is the key of E, which has 4 sharps, right? Okay? Just a little pop quiz. What's the relative minor for E major?
C sharp.
Yeah, and that's going to play a role in this next tune. Now, taking a look at this bottom piece in the key of E, anybody can tell me what the name of that tune is before we start? I'll guarantee it's almost impossible looking at the changes, unless you've played the tune before. Okay, here it is. the modulation, you can really catch that when it gets to that part of the tune. You go, ah, that's great. Let's go back really quickly and take a look at the couple chords. Can you find the chords that aren't in the key of E? Most of them are until we get to that last little section. Anything that jumps out at you as not being in the key of E? I'll give you a clue. The first one is on the second line.
G sharp.
G sharp 7. Where's it going? What's the next chord?
C sharp.
Yeah, C sharp minor. What is G sharp in relationship to C minor? 5, right, exactly. So there's your cat. You're preceding the 6th of the chord with its 5, right? It gives a little bit more interest. You can do it like this. Let's see where I'm in the tune. Oh, yeah. Here it is. See, but he does this. Right, gives a little more color. And then, oh, this is a mind blower. We've got A major there, which is the 4 chord in the key of E. What's it preceded with? B minor 7, D7. Has anybody, beboppers in here, played 2/5 progressions or heard people talk about 2/5 progressions? That's a 2/5 progression. In the key of A, B minor is the 2, E7 is the 5. So, while we're going to the 4 chord, they would call this, your wife would call this a 2/5 of 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. So we're going to the 4 chord, but to precede it, we do 2/5, and that happens all the time in bebop. You know, those kind of things. Yeah, there are 2/5s all over the place. Charlie Parker was famous for that. He'd take a standard tune like, what was the name of that one? That's Don Lee is based on it. Playing thing here, C major, so you can see what some of these progressions sound like. That you can, and we're just using C major now because that's the easiest one for us to do. Before we do that, anybody have any questions? Comments, anything that we need to go over or advance things? Okay. All right, so anyway, I'm just going to play progression made up of the key of C, and I want you just to provide. Now, this is the thing, guys. If your progression, I don't know how many of you like to solo, improvise, even singing, whatever. If your progression, your chords, all come out of the same key, what scale can you use to improvise over all of those chords? This is the parent scale, right? So for all of these chords sitting up there in the key of C, you can use a C major scale and fit over everything. Okay, so let's try it. I'm going to let you play C major scale, and I'm just going to play some stuff. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3.
Just play the scale.
Yeah. Well, play your scale first, yeah. And then just play it all, anything. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what happens if I start on the 3 chord and I play 3, 4, and 5. You're going to do the same thing, but let me play it first. And I'm going to play a little bit with that. It didn't remotely sound like C major, right? And I used that kind of Moorish, it actually should be E minor. But they do a little kind of a Moorish sound, but they're using 3, 4, and Great. Okay, now we're gonna play some bebop. Miles' tune, So What? Remember that? Anyway, this is what's called a modal tune, and all we're gonna do is improvise on D minor, okay, which is the 2 chord, but you're gonna play C major. But then the bridge of the tune will move up a half step. So you're gonna play C major scale, and when I tell you to, you just move it up a half step to a D, C sharp or D flat major scale. Okay? So what I'm gonna play is kind of a Miles Davis kind of thing. D minor, E minor, the chords that you're gonna play the C major over, and then he modulates up a half step. Chromatic modulation. No, I'll play, you play the solo. Here we go, 1 and 2. We need a walking bass player, because we don't right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very minor, right? Doesn't sound like C major. Now go up to D flat major. Back to C major. Lovely. Excellent. Excellent. Wonderful. Okay, so my point is, just as a side note, remember that the diatonic harmony that we studied today doesn't only accommodate the chords of the key, but also becomes a very, very powerful tool for soloing and improvisation. Okay, so there's a lot of material on the internet about all this. We were just talking about that, YouTube and the internet. In fact, one of the coolest things, if you're into jazz or any kind of thing, they have a ton of play-along tracks on YouTube. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they have like Music -1 for all kinds of things. You know, you can, if you want to practice along with tunes or learn tunes, everything you want is on the internet. So for assignments, I would suggest that you guys do this. I would suggest that you write, only if this is something that you want to pursue, that you write out the diatonic chords, including the 7s, if you want, in all keys to use as a reference guide, right? And just keep it someplace so that you have a place to go when you're looking for material for songwriting. Okay, and another thing you can do is analyze songs that you like, a little bit like we did today. Find out how many of the tunes fall within the same key, and if they do depart, where do they depart, how long do they depart for, and where do they go? Is it a half step? Is it a dominant 7? And just one other word about changing keys. Remember that we can use that powerful dominant on the 5 to change keys. If you want to move, for example, to the key of A from the key of C, which is going from no sharps or no flats to 3 sharps, all you have to do is change the E minor and the C diatonic series to an E7. That becomes 5 of A major, and you're there. So Beethoven used that a lot. You can modulate to any key you want to by preceding that key with its 5. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Don't forget the power of the 5-1 progression. It is it's the root of all the music that we really do. Okay, any questions? We good? Yeah.
I'm just curious, since MacArthur's Party is one of my favorite songs.
Uh-huh.
How, is it changed keys?
It's been so long since I played that one, and I'm so old I can't remember. But if you can find a copy of it, you can listen to it and sing it. And do you read music at all?
No.
Okay. You can probably hear, now knowing what you know about diatonic, you can hear when something doesn't fit within the key.
Jimmy Webb. Richard sang Jimmy Webb.
Yeah.
Of course.
Sing the first part of it for me. I'll see if I can remember that tune.
No, that's this. It starts out slow. Something about I recall the yellow satin dress laying around the feet. And he's in the park. But the chorus is, MacArthur's Park is melting in the dark. All the sweet
yeah.
flowing down. Because one time Mary was
Maynard's version. I'm sorry. No, the
Sometime, one
Maynard's
time
version.
Mary was here, and I don't remember who was at the piano, and I thought it was a key change, and she said, no, it's a modulation.
Yeah, well, modulation is, and there's two kinds of modulations. There's one where you actually go to that key for a long time, and then there's something they call a temporary tonicization for just a couple bars. That, for example, in the Sting tune that I did, Every Breath You Take, that last section, and not that you want this terminology, but that last section of the Every Breath You Take, where you went to C, D, that was very far removed from 4 sharps in his main key. That's called a chromatic mediant modulation. A lot of times those things happen. A mediant being 3, normally C to E would be E minor, right? That's a mediant relationship that's within sharing the same key.